The research station's emergency beacon cut through the endless darkness of space like a desperate scream. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the rescue vessel, watching the distant lights of Station Echo 7 grow larger against the backdrop of Europa's ice-covered surface. Something had gone terribly wrong during the deep ice excavation project, and the distress signal had been broadcasting for 3 days before anyone received it. "Still no response to our hails," reported Captain Torres from the pilot's seat. "Whatever happened down there, we're going in blind." Sarah nodded grimly, checking her equipment one final time. As the lead xenoarchaeologist for the Outer Rim Survey Division, she had seen her share of mysterious discoveries, but the fragmented messages they had received painted a picture that defied explanation. The excavation team had found something buried deep in Europa's ancient ice, something that had been there for thousands of years. The docking bay of Echo 7 was eerily quiet as their shuttle touched down. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the normally bustling station, and the air recyclers hummed with an unusual resonance that made Sarah's skin crawl. Captain Torres insisted on taking point as they made their way through the corridors, his weapon drawn and scanning for any signs of the missing crew. They found the first body near the excavation elevator. Dr. Marcus Webb, the project leader, lay crumpled against the wall with no visible injuries. His face was peaceful, almost serene, as if he had simply decided to take a nap in the middle of a crisis. Sarah knelt beside him, running her scanner over his body. "No trauma, no radiation exposure, no toxins," she reported. His vital signs just stopped, like his body forgot how to function. More bodies were scattered throughout the station, all in the same condition. 15 researchers and technicians, all dead without explanation. The only clue was the excavation site itself, where the massive drilling equipment sat abandoned around a perfectly circular hole that descended deep into Europa's ice sheet. Sarah peered over the edge of the excavation site, her headlamp beam disappearing into the darkness below. "Torres, look at this ice. The walls of this shaft are completely smooth, almost crystalline. This wasn't carved by our equipment." The captain joined her at the edge, his own light joining hers in the depths. "How deep does it go?" "According to the logs, they hit something solid at 800 meters. Then the drilling stopped, and the emergency beacon started broadcasting 6 hours later." Sarah consulted her tablet, scrolling through the final entries in the station's database. Dr. Webb's last entry mentions unprecedented thermal readings and artificial geometric patterns. Then nothing. They descended into the shaft using the excavation elevator, the ice walls sliding past them in a hypnotic rhythm. The temperature readings on Sarah's instruments dropped steadily as they went deeper, far below what should have been possible given Europa's geological activity. At 700 meters, her breath began to fog despite her heated suit. The bottom of the shaft opened into a vast cavern that defied the laws of physics. The space was enormous, easily the size of a football stadium, carved from solid ice with mathematical precision. Geometric patterns covered every surface, flowing lines and symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light of their headlamps. But it was the object at the center of the cavern that made both of them stop breathing. A massive crystalline structure rose from the cavern floor like a frozen cathedral. It was clearly artificial, composed of materials that reflected their lights in impossible ways. The surface seemed to be both transparent and opaque simultaneously, revealing glimpses of something within while maintaining an impenetrable mystery. Dark conduits ran through the crystal like veins, pulsing with a faint blue luminescence that had no identifiable source. "Sarah," Torres whispered, his voice tight with awe and fear. "Tell me you're recording this." She was already documenting everything, her equipment working overtime to capture the impossible geometry of the chamber. But as they approached the crystalline structure, her instruments began to malfunction. Radiation detectors screamed warnings, then went silent. Temperature sensors fluctuated wildly between readings that ranged from absolute zero to the surface of a star. The structure was roughly 40 meters tall and 20 meters wide at its base. As they circled it, looking for any kind of entrance or control mechanism, Sarah noticed that the pulsing lights within seemed to be following a pattern. It was subtle at first, but the rhythm was definitely there, like a heartbeat or breathing. "Torres, there's something alive in there." The captain's weapon was immediately in his hands, though what good it would do against whatever was inside the crystal was anyone's guess. "Alive how? Are we talking microorganisms or something bigger?" Sarah pressed her scanner against the crystal surface, trying to penetrate its mysterious depths. The readings were chaos, but occasionally her equipment managed to glimpse something solid within the structure. "Bigger, much bigger. I'm reading what might be organic tissue, but the composition is unlike anything in our databases." As if responding to her words, the crystal began to change. The blue luminescence grew brighter, and the geometric patterns on the cavern walls started to pulse in rhythm with the lights inside the structure. A low harmonic sound filled the air, felt more than heard, vibrating through their bones and making their teeth ache. "We should get out of here," Torres said, but Sarah was transfixed by what she was seeing. The crystal was becoming transparent, revealing its contents layer by layer. Inside was a chamber filled with some kind of preservative fluid, and floating within that fluid was the unmistakable shape of a human body. But this was no ordinary human. Even through the distorted crystal and mysterious liquid, she could see that the figure was massive, easily 7 feet tall, with proportions that spoke of incredible physical power. "Torres, look at this. Look at the bone density readings, the muscle mass. This person was enhanced, heavily modified for combat purposes. The skeletal structure alone could withstand forces that would crush a normal human. The figure wore some kind of advanced armor that seemed to be integrated directly into their body. Cables and conduits ran from the suit into ports that had been surgically implanted along the spine and limbs. Even in stasis, the warrior looked formidable, hands that could crush steel relaxed at their sides." "How long has he been down here?" Torres asked. Sarah consulted her dating equipment, running multiple scans on the ice surrounding the crystal structure. "The ice formation around this chamber is at least 3,000 years old, possibly older. But that's impossible. Humans didn't have this kind of technology 3,000 years ago." The harmonic sound grew louder, and the crystal began to crack. Not breaking, but opening, following seam lines that had been invisible before. The preservative fluid within began to drain away through hidden channels, and the warrior's body started to descend toward the bottom of the chamber. "Sarah, we need to leave, now!" But even as Torres grabbed her arm, the cavern filled with a new sound. Voices, speaking in harmonies that no human throat could produce. The geometric patterns on the walls were moving now, flowing like water, rearranging themselves into new configurations. And from somewhere above them came the unmistakable sound of spacecraft engines. The rescue beacon, Sarah realized. It wasn't calling for help, it was calling them. The crystal structure completed its transformation, becoming a transparent cylinder that revealed the warrior in full detail. He was magnificent and terrifying, a fusion of human determination and technological advancement that spoke of wars fought among the stars. Scars covered his visible skin, but they were precise, surgical, marking where additional enhancements had been installed. Light began to pour down from above as something massive blocked out the distant opening of the shaft. Through her radio, Sarah could hear her ship's automated systems responding to new contacts, vessels of unknown design that were approaching the station. The voices in the cavern grew louder, more urgent, and the warrior's body began to show signs of life. "His heart rate is increasing," Sarah reported, unable to look away from her scanners. "Neural activity is spiking. Whatever they did to preserve him, the process is reversing." Torres was pulling her toward the elevator, but the warrior's eyes opened before they could escape. They were the eyes of someone who had seen the end of worlds, someone who had been prepared for a war that was just beginning. As his gaze fell on them, Sarah felt the weight of history shifting, ancient plans falling into place. The spacecraft above were descending into the shaft, their alien geometries defying human understanding of aerodynamics. Sarah caught glimpses of beings moving within their transparent hulls, creatures that were tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift between familiar and utterly alien depending on the angle of observation. "The cosmic visitors," she whispered. "They've come to restore him." The warrior's body convulsed as unknown systems activated within his enhanced frame. Lights began to glow beneath his skin, following the paths of artificial circulatory systems that had been installed alongside his natural biology. His breathing became regular, powerful, each inhalation drawing in the thin air of the cavern and somehow extracting more oxygen than should have been possible. One of the alien vessels touched down in the cavern, its hull flowing like liquid metal to create an opening. The beings that emerged moved with purpose and urgency, their multiple arms carrying devices that hummed with the same harmonic frequency as the crystal chamber. They paid no attention to Sarah and Torres, focused entirely on the awakening warrior. Sarah's translator systems struggled with their language, catching fragments of meaning that spoke of timelines, preparations, and something approaching that required the warrior's unique capabilities. The beings connected their devices to ports in the crystal chamber, and the warrior's revival process accelerated dramatically. His eyes focused, intelligence returning to features that had been slack with centuries of sleep. When he spoke, his voice was a rumbling bass that seemed to resonate from multiple sources within his enhanced chest cavity. "How long?" he asked, the words coming out in perfectly accented English despite his obvious origins in a time before such language existed. One of the cosmic visitors responded in their harmonic tongue, and Sarah's translator managed to parse the meaning. 3 millennia, 2 centuries, 17 years. The approach vector has been confirmed. You are needed. The warrior's massive frame began to move, enhanced muscles responding to neural commands with fluid precision. He looked down at Sarah and Torres, studying them with eyes that held depths of knowledge and experience that no human should possess. "You found me," he said, and there was something like gratitude in his voice. "Good. The preparation phase is complete." As he stepped from the crystal chamber, Sarah realized that everything humanity thought it knew about its own history was about to change. The cosmic visitors had been watching, waiting, preparing for something that required a human warrior enhanced beyond the limits of normal biology. And now, after 3,000 years of frozen sleep, he was awake. The war that had been planned before the rise of human civilization was about to begin, and Earth's greatest champion had finally returned to fight it. The warrior's first steps were unsteady, his enhanced nervous system recalibrating after millennia of dormancy. Sarah watched in fascination as microscopic machines became visible beneath his skin, flowing like luminous rivers along his circulatory pathways. Each movement caused small adjustments to his balance and coordination as his body remembered how to function at superhuman levels. The cosmic visitors worked around him with practiced efficiency, their elongated fingers dancing over holographic displays that materialized in the air. Dr. Chen's translation software continued to struggle with their complex harmonic language, but gradually she began to understand fragments of their medical discussions. They were monitoring cellular regeneration rates, neural pathway reconstruction, and something called quantum consciousness alignment. "Your designation," one of the visitors addressed the warrior in that melodious voice. "Do you recall your designation?" The warrior paused, his enhanced mind processing layers of memories that had been carefully preserved during his long sleep. Marcus Henley, 1st Legion, Stellar Defense Corps. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, despite the obvious impossibility of such an organization existing 3,000 years ago. Captain Torres stepped forward cautiously, his weapon lowered, but ready. "That's impossible. The Stellar Defense Corps is from science fiction novels. It doesn't exist." Marcus turned toward him, and Sarah felt the temperature in the cavern drop several degrees under the intensity of his gaze. "Your linear perception of time is limited. Captain, the Corps exists when it needs to exist. I was prepared for this moment before your species discovered fire." One of the cosmic visitors approached Sarah, moving with a flowing grace that reminded her of water given form. When it spoke, her translator finally managed to parse the meaning clearly. "Dr. Chen, your presence here was not coincidental. Your research into ancient ice formations, your specific expertise in xenoarchaeology, your psychological profile indicating exceptional adaptability to paradigm shifts. We have been guiding your career for 15 years. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Every major discovery she had made, every promotion, every assignment that had led her to this moment had been orchestrated. "You've been manipulating my life?" "Preparing you," the being corrected gently. "Marcus requires a human liaison who can understand both the scientific implications of what is happening and the cultural context of current human civilization. You are uniquely qualified to serve that function." Marcus was undergoing a more intensive restoration process now. The visitors had connected him to a device that looked like a cross between a medical scanner and a quantum computer. Energy flowed through crystalline conduits into various ports along his spine and limbs, causing his enhanced biology to respond in ways that defied conventional understanding of human anatomy. "The neural engrams are stable," reported one of the visitors. "Combat reflexes intact, tactical analysis systems operating within normal parameters, weapon integration protocols responding correctly." Sarah watched as portions of Marcus's armor began to shift and reconfigure. What she had initially taken for static plating was actually a living system, capable of adapting to different combat scenarios. Weapon ports opened along his forearms, revealing energy projectors that hummed with barely contained power. "What exactly is he?" she asked. The lead visitor, distinguished by additional limb articulations and a more complex pattern of bioluminescent markings, turned to address her directly. "Marcus is what your species will become, given sufficient time and pressure. He represents the pinnacle of human evolution when guided by necessity and enhanced by technology. But he's from our past, not our future. Time is not linear for beings of our advancement level. We experience causality as humans experience space, able to move through it with intention and purpose. Marcus was created in what you would call the future, then placed in what you call the past, to be available for what you call the present." Captain Torres was recording everything, his face a mask of controlled confusion. "This is insane. You're talking about temporal manipulation on a scale that violates everything we know about physics." Marcus stood up from the restoration device, his movements now fluid and controlled. He towered over them, his enhanced physique making even the tall cosmic visitors seem small by comparison. "Captain Torres, your understanding of physics is based on observations made from a single point in space-time. These beings experience reality from multiple dimensional perspectives simultaneously." The warrior's voice had changed during the restoration process. Where before it had been merely deep and resonant, now it carried harmonic undertones that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the brain. Sarah realized that his vocal cords had been enhanced with technology that allowed him to communicate in the same multidimensional way as the visitors. "Show me the threat," Marcus commanded, and the cavern around them transformed. The walls dissolved, replaced by a three-dimensional holographic display that encompassed the entire chamber. Sarah found herself standing in a representation of local space, with star systems and spacecraft movements plotted in real time. The scale was enormous, showing activity across dozens of light years. The Devourers approach, the lead visitor explained, highlighting a section of space where reality itself seemed to be unraveling. They have consumed 7 galaxies across multiple dimensional planes. Their hunger is not for matter or energy, but for existence itself. They unmake everything they encounter, reducing entire civilizations to quantum foam. Marcus studied the display with the intensity of someone whose entire existence had been dedicated to understanding such threats. His enhanced eyes tracked movement patterns and tactical formations with superhuman speed and precision. Timeline until first contact with human space? 18 months, 7 days, 14 hours, came the precise response. Sarah felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. Why us? Why is humanity important enough to create a warrior like Marcus and preserve him for thousands of years? The lead visitor's form shimmered, and for a moment Sarah could see through their carefully maintained humanoid appearance to something far more complex underneath. Humanity possesses a unique quality that we have observed in only 3 other species across 12 billion years of galactic exploration. When faced with impossible odds, humans do not surrender. You adapt, you improvise, you find ways to turn weakness into strength. Other species with greater technology, superior numbers, even civilizations with access to dimensional manipulation have fallen to the Devourers because they fought conventional wars. They use their strengths against an enemy that feeds on strength. Humans fight dirty. You use tactics that more advanced species consider beneath them. Marcus nodded approvingly. Asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, the willingness to sacrifice anything and everything for victory. These beings have never encountered an enemy that bites when it should surrender. The restoration process was continuing even as they spoke. Sarah could see that Marcus's biological systems were being upgraded in real time, his cellular structure reinforced with materials that shouldn't exist according to human science. His bones were being laced with what appeared to be crystallized space-time, making them virtually indestructible while somehow maintaining flexibility. The enhancement process, she observed, it's not just technological. You're changing his fundamental biology. Marcus volunteered for this transformation in a timeline that now will never exist, the lead visitor explained. He experienced a version of the war against the Devourers where humanity fought alone and lost. Every human world was consumed, every achievement of your species erased from existence. In that timeline, Marcus was the last human alive, enhanced beyond recognition, in a desperate attempt to become something that could survive the Devourers' reality-eating effects. He held out for 7 years in a pocket dimension, alone, fighting a war that had already been lost. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes. The memory of ultimate defeat, of watching everything he had ever cared about, dissolved into nothingness. When the cosmic visitors offered me a chance to prevent that timeline, to go back and ensure humanity was ready for the war, I accepted immediately. Even knowing it meant giving up your original life, your original identity. Dr. Chen, I watched the Earth itself unravel, its atoms scattered across dimensional boundaries that no longer existed. My personal concerns became irrelevant the moment I realized what we were facing. The holographic display shifted to show detailed analysis of Devourer technology and tactics. Their ships, if they could be called ships, were constructs of pure entropy given physical form. They moved through space by convincing reality that they had always been at their destination, making faster-than-light travel seem primitive by comparison. Traditional weapons are useless, Marcus explained. studying the data with professional interest. Energy weapons feed them. Kinetic weapons pass through them harmlessly. Nuclear explosions actually make them stronger by providing more complex matter to unmake. Then how do you fight them? Marcus smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You don't fight them directly. You fight the space they occupy. You convince reality that they don't belong, that their existence is a logical contradiction. It requires weapons that attack the fundamental laws of physics rather than the enemy themselves. The cosmic visitors began producing equipment from their ship, devices that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist in more dimensions than human vision could process, creating optical illusions that made Sarah's head spin. When Marcus handled them, his enhanced nervous system allowed him to interact with their multiple-dimensional properties without apparent difficulty. These are reality anchors, he explained. They create stable points in space-time that the Devourers cannot unmake. Deployed correctly, they can trap Devourer entities in recursive causality loops, forcing them to exist in contradiction to their nature until they dissolve. Weapons that attack existence itself, Torres muttered. This is beyond science fiction. This is beyond anything humans could understand or use. Marcus attached one of the devices to his forearm, where it integrated seamlessly with his enhanced biology. That's where you're wrong, Captain. Humans are uniquely suited for this kind of warfare because you already fight wars that shouldn't be possible. You've been practicing reality manipulation for your entire species' history. Every time a human refuses to accept defeat, when defeat is logically inevitable, you're manipulating probability. Every time someone survives injuries that should be fatal through sheer determination, you're editing the laws of physics. Every time your species accomplishes something that mathematics says is impossible, you're demonstrating the same abilities needed to fight the Devourers. Sarah began to understand the scope of what they were facing. This isn't just about saving humanity from invasion. This is about humanity learning to become something more than human. The first step in that evolution stands before you, the lead visitor agreed. Marcus is the prototype, the proof that humans can be enhanced to levels that allow them to manipulate fundamental forces. But he cannot fight this war alone. The warrior was now fully restored, his body a perfect fusion of human determination and cosmic technology. When he moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around him, accommodating his enhanced existence. His very presence altered probability in subtle ways, making the impossible seem merely unlikely. How many others can be transformed like him? Sarah asked. With current technology and the time remaining, perhaps 50, but 50 enhanced humans, properly equipped and trained, should be sufficient to establish the reality anchors needed to protect Earth and begin the counterattack. Marcus was testing his enhanced capabilities, moving through combat forms that incorporated quantum mechanics and dimensional theory. His fists struck empty air and created ripples in space-time. When he activated his weapon systems, the temperature in the cavern dropped to near absolute zero as he drew energy directly from the quantum vacuum. The selection process has already begun, he informed them. Candidates are being identified across your species, military personnel, scientists, individuals who have already demonstrated the psychological resilience needed for this transformation. What about the rest of humanity? What happens to everyone else? The lead visitor's expression, as much as Sarah could read alien emotions, seemed to convey deep sadness. They will learn that their universe is larger and more dangerous than they ever imagined. Some will adapt and join the war effort. Others will retreat into denial. A few will attempt to negotiate with the Devourers, not understanding that beings which consume existence itself cannot be reasoned with. Marcus began walking toward the elevator, his enhanced stride covering ground with mechanical precision. Dr. Chen, Captain Torres, you have a choice to make. You can return to the surface and attempt to convince your governments that an impossible war is coming, or you can join the enhancement program and become part of the solution. Sarah looked at the cosmic visitors, at their impossible technology, at the warrior who had been created to fight a war across time itself. Everything she had believed about human limitations, about the nature of reality, had been shattered in the space of a few hours. If I join the program, what happens to who I am now? Marcus paused at the elevator entrance. You become more than you ever imagined possible, Dr. Chen. But you remain fundamentally yourself. The enhancement process preserves consciousness and identity while expanding capability. How long do we have to decide? The Devourers cross the galactic boundary in 18 months. The enhancement process takes 6 months. Training takes another 6 months. He looked directly at her with eyes that held the weight of multiple lifetimes. Decide quickly, Dr. Chen. The war for existence itself is about to begin. 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Chen barely recognized herself in the reflection of the quantum mirror. Her enhanced physiology had adapted to capabilities that made her former human limitations seem like distant memories. Neural implants allowed her to process information at speeds that approached artificial intelligence, while biological modifications had restructured her cellular matrix to interface directly with reality anchor technology. She was no longer the only enhanced human. The selection process had identified candidates across Earth's population, individuals whose psychological profiles indicated the mental flexibility needed to survive the transformation. Military commanders, theoretical physicists, emergency responders, artists whose creativity allowed them to think beyond conventional boundaries. 53 individuals had successfully completed the enhancement protocol. Marcus stood at the center of the transformed Station Echo 7, now serving as humanity's primary training facility for the war against the Devourers. The cosmic visitors had rebuilt the installation using technology that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating spaces that were larger inside than outside and training rooms where the laws of physics could be adjusted for combat simulations. Today we test the first reality anchor deployment, Marcus announced to the assembled enhanced humans. His voice carried new harmonics that resonated with their modified nervous systems, allowing for communication that transcended language. The Devourers have entered the outer rim of the galaxy. First contact is now estimated at 4 months. Sarah checked her equipment one final time. The reality anchor she carried was a crystalline device no larger than her fist. But it contained enough concentrated space-time manipulation technology to create a stable pocket of existence that the Devourers could not unmake. The theory was sound, but theory and practice were often separated by the difference between survival and extinction. The test target was approaching through hyperspace, a single Devourer scout that the cosmic visitors had detected moving toward human space. It was smaller than the main force, roughly the size of a modern aircraft carrier, but its entropy field was already beginning to affect local spacetime. Stars in its path were flickering, their light becoming uncertain as reality questioned their right to exist. Captain Torres, now enhanced with tactical analysis systems that allowed him to track multiple dimensional threats simultaneously, coordinated the deployment from the station's quantum command center. Target will emerge from hyperspace in 30 seconds. Reality distortion field expanding. We're reading temporal fluctuations across a sphere 2 light minutes in diameter. The enhanced humans moved into position around the station, each carrying a reality anchor tuned to specific frequencies of existence. Sarah found herself paired with Dr. James Morrison, a theoretical physicist whose enhancement had focused on quantum consciousness manipulation. Together they would attempt to create an overlap field that could contain the Devourer's entropy effects. Remember, Marcus's voice reached them through the quantum communication network. You are not fighting the Devourer directly. You are fighting the space it has convinced to serve it. Make reality remember what it was before the Devourer arrived. The enemy scout materialized in normal space like a wound in existence itself. Sarah's enhanced vision could perceive its true form, a structure that existed in 11 dimensions while only intersecting 3-dimensional space at specific points. It was beautiful and terrifying, a geometric impossibility that hurt to observe directly. Immediately, the devourer began its consumption process. The space around it started to unravel, stars growing dim as their nuclear fusion became probabilistically unlikely. The cosmic background radiation fluctuated, ancient photons suddenly uncertain whether they had ever existed. "Reality anchors, deploy now," Marcus commanded. Sarah activated her device, feeling it draw power directly from her enhanced cellular matrix. The crystal in her hands became transparent, then began to emit a frequency that existed outside normal space-time. Around her, the other enhanced humans were creating similar fields, each anchor point establishing a node of stable reality in the expanding chaos. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the reality anchors operated, space-time snapped back into its normal configuration. Stars that had been dimming blazed back to full brightness. The cosmic background radiation stabilized, resuming its ancient journey through a universe that remembered its own existence. But the devourer was not passive in the face of this resistance. It began to move, not through space but through probability, attempting to position itself in locations where it had always existed. Sarah watched in fascination as the entity tried to edit its own history, making itself native to this region of space. "It's trying to become indigenous to our reality," she reported through the quantum link. "Rewriting causality to make itself belong here." Marcus appeared beside her, moving through a form of teleportation that Sarah's enhanced senses could barely track. "That's exactly what we expected. Morrison, initiate the causality loop now." Dr. Morrison had been concentrating on a device that existed primarily in the temporal dimension. When he activated it, the devourer's editing attempts became recursive, causing it to attempt to rewrite its own rewriting in an endless loop. The entity found itself trapped in a logical contradiction, simultaneously trying to exist and not exist in the same space-time coordinates. The effect was devastating to the devourer. Its entropy field began to collapse as it consumed itself, unmaking its own efforts to unmake reality. Within moments, the entity dissolved into quantum foam, its constituent energy dispersing harmlessly into the cosmic background. "First kill confirmed," Torres reported from the station. "Target neutralized with minimal collateral damage to local spacetime." But Sarah's enhanced consciousness was already detecting new threats. Her awareness had expanded during the combat, allowing her to perceive activities across multiple star systems simultaneously. What she saw made her blood run cold. "Marcus, they know we're here. The main devourer force is changing course. They're not heading for the galactic core anymore. They're coming directly for Earth." The warrior's expression didn't change, but Sarah felt the ripple of quantum determination that radiated from his enhanced nervous system. Expected. The devourers have never encountered effective resistance before. They'll want to study and eliminate the source of that resistance before proceeding with galactic consumption. The cosmic visitors' ships began emerging from higher dimensional space around the station, their impossible geometries unfolding into 3-dimensional configurations that could interact with human technology. The lead visitor, whom Sarah had learned to call the coordinator, approached with information that made the successful test feel like a minor victory in the face of cosmic annihilation. "The main force has been confirmed at 417 entities, each significantly larger than the scout you destroyed. They will arrive in local space within 96 hours. All devourer forces in this galactic region are converging on your position," Marcus began issuing orders through the quantum communication network, his enhanced tactical systems coordinating responses across multiple probability matrices simultaneously. All enhanced humans return to station immediately. We're moving to final phase deployment. Dr. Chen, prepare for mass reality anchor production. Sarah's mind raced through the calculations. 53 enhanced humans against more than 400 entropy entities that could unmake existence itself. The mathematics were beyond hopeless, even accounting for their reality manipulation technology. But as she watched Marcus coordinate the defense, she realized that hopeless mathematics had never stopped humanity before. "We're not going to fight them in open space," she said, suddenly understanding the true scope of the plan. "We're going to let them come to us." "The solar system itself becomes our weapon," Marcus confirmed. "Every planet, every asteroid, every particle of cosmic dust becomes a potential reality anchor. We turn our entire local space into a trap that the devourers cannot escape." The next 3 days transformed human civilization. Governments that had been skeptical of the cosmic visitors' warnings suddenly found themselves coordinating with beings whose technology made their most advanced weapons look like stone tools. Military installations worldwide were converted into reality anchor production facilities, while the enhanced humans worked around the clock to establish the quantum network needed for system-wide deployment. Sarah found herself in charge of Earth's anchor grid, positioning devices at locations calculated to maximize their overlap fields. The moon became a primary node, its gravitational field serving as a natural amplifier for the reality stabilization effect. Mars was converted into a backup command center, while the asteroid belt was seeded with thousands of smaller anchors that could create localized pockets of stable spacetime. On the day of arrival, Sarah stood on the observation deck of Luna Base, watching through enhanced vision, as reality itself began to warp at the edge of the solar system. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace, like a cancer metastasizing through healthy tissue, their entropy fields immediately beginning to consume the outer planetary orbits. Pluto simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but edited out of reality as if it had never been formed. Neptune's moons began to flicker in and out of existence as their probability matrices became unstable. The outer solar system became a battlefield where existence itself was the weapon. "Initiate Earth Defense Protocol," Marcus commanded from the Quantum Center. Every reality anchor in the solar system activated simultaneously, creating a network of stable spacetime that stretched from Mercury's orbit to the Kuiper Belt. The effect was like watching the universe remember itself, probability waves snapping back into stable configurations as the anchor fields reinforced the fundamental laws of physics. The Devourer fleet found itself trapped in a maze of stable reality, unable to continue their consumption process, while the anchor network remained active. They began to concentrate their efforts on the strongest nodes, attempting to overwhelm the reality fields through sheer entropic pressure. "They're focusing on the Luna base anchor," Sarah reported as she felt the quantum field around her beginning to strain. "If they break through here, they can create a gap in the network." Marcus appeared through quantum teleportation, his enhanced form now radiating energy that existed in multiple dimensional spectrums simultaneously. "Then we make our stand here. Dr. Chen, are you ready to find out what enhanced humans can really accomplish?" Sarah activated every enhancement in her system, feeling her consciousness expand to encompass the reality field around Luna Base. She could perceive the Devourer entities as they concentrated their attack, beings of pure entropy attempting to convince the universe that the moon had never existed. But Sarah's human consciousness, enhanced and amplified by cosmic technology, pushed back against their reality editing. She remembered Luna Base, remembered every moment of its construction, every human who had walked its corridors. Her enhanced memory became a weapon, insisting on the moon's existence with the stubborn determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in its history. Around her, the other enhanced humans were doing the same thing at their assigned anchor points. Each one became a lighthouse of stable reality, their human consciousness serving as an anchor point that the Devourers could not unmake. They were not just fighting for their lives, but for the right of existence itself to continue. The battle raged across multiple dimensions, human determination against cosmic entropy, consciousness against the void. And slowly, impossibly, the humans began to win. The Devourer fleet found itself trapped in recursive causality loops, their own entropy fields turned against them by the reality anchor network. One by one, the entities dissolved into quantum foam, unmade by their own attempts to unmake the universe around them. The surviving Devourers attempted to retreat, but the anchor network had created a pocket of stable space-time that they could not escape. When the last Devourer entity dissolved, Sarah felt the quantum field around her stabilize into a new configuration. The solar system had been fundamentally changed by the battle, space-time itself enhanced and reinforced by the reality anchor network. Earth and its neighboring worlds were now protected by physics that had been upgraded to resist entropy-based attacks. Marcus stood beside her as they watched the cosmic visitors' ships preparing to depart. Their task was complete. Humanity had proven itself capable of fighting wars that existed beyond normal understanding of reality. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Marcus looked out at the stars, his enhanced vision already detecting new threats and opportunities in the galactic disk. "Now we take the fight to them. The Devourers have consumed 7 galaxies, Dr. Chen. It's time they learned what happens when they try to unmake a species that refuses to surrender." Sarah smiled, feeling the quantum determination flowing through her enhanced nervous system. Humanity had always been a species that turned its weaknesses into strengths, that found ways to win unwinnable wars. Now they had the tools to carry that determination to the stars themselves. The war for existence was just beginning, and humanity was ready to fight.